Thank you for watching PT Bubbles. This is the third video in a series of episodes that I've been making that will take you through or removing and installing everything from the brake calipers and the rotor to removing the K-frame and the rack and pinion to replace the rack and pinion, and then putting it all back together. In this video, we'll focus on removing the driver's side CV axle right here, which goes into the transaxle. We're going to be doing this is the lower one, the center motor mount Torx bolt that will need to be loosened. We'll need to loosen the upper, that bolt right there. That's going to let us rock the engine back and forth, which we will need to do to set the angle of the engine, but we definitely need to take off because it connects to the K-frame. The next thing we'll be taking off is the K-frame. You can see it, I painted mine green. The rack and pinion bolts down to the K-frame, and that's part of the reason we are well, that is the reason why we're removing the whole K-frame. One last thing you'll have to do is decouple the steering column in the car where the steering wheel is, and then there's an arm that comes off of the rack and pinion that goes up through the firewall, and you're going to decouple that. The driver's side CV axle is very difficult to remove. The manual says that the CV axle, they call it the tripod, which is back here, this section that actually kind of snaps into the transaxle, is supposed to have a notch that you can get a hammer and a punch, and knock this thing out once it's time. I have noticed that aftermarket CV axles don't have that notch, and that's part of why it's very difficult to get this CV axle removed on the driver's side. Some people have success getting some sort of crowbar or something back in there, behind, so they can pop that CV axle out of the transaxle, and it's secured in there with a little C-clip on the end of the splined rod that goes in, so that's why it's difficult to pop out. You will see me, as I've done in other videos, once I've removed the K-frame and I have very much more easy access to the driver's side CV axle, I just use a grinder and I cut a section into that tripod where I can put in a crowbar and pop it out. I've found that is the easiest way to go. Now, if you're replacing the CV axle anyway, no big deal. You can you're just going to pop in a new one anyway, but you will destroy, of course, the CV axle by doing that. So that's the downside to doing it, but I still do it because it saves a lot of time, I find, and a lot of frustration and a lot of banging your knuckles around, hurting yourself, all that kind of stuff. It can be really frustrating. So you'll see me grind that thing down, and that's why. Once you've got the rack and pinion, also called the power steering gear in the service manual, something you will need to transfer from the old rack and pinion to the new one, if you are swapping your rack and pinion, is this lower steering coupler. And it's got a universal swivel joint, and then the actual lower coupler here. And of note is that this lower coupler, this is where right let's see this section right here, this is where we took that pinch bolt off on the upper coupling to this inside, underneath the dash from the steering column. There's that upper coupler, and this is where it attaches to this lower coupler, which then goes to the rack and pinion. And you can even see the notch in this lower coupler where that pinch bolt up top goes. So we have to remove this whole assembly with this roll pin. Push down this seal, and there's the roll pin is right at the base of that. Goes through that swivel kind of universal joint coupler base and keeps it from coming off of the power steering gear pinion shaft, which we'll see once we take the lower coupling off. So at this point, we're ready just to get a hammer and a punch and hammer out that roll pin. Now I can see that it's got more sticking out of this side right now, which means it was probably, well, it's hard to say which side it was hammered in from, but I'm gonna guess this way. So I'm gonna hammer from this side to get it out of there. And you want a punch that will fit in where that roll pin is, not too fat, because you're gonna need to probably hammer it, and your punch is gonna have to go through the coupling. So I'm finding a couple different thicknesses here to find which one will work. I think this will do it. Now this is easier when your rack and pinion power steering gear is still mounted on the K-frame, because it won't wobble around as much. But let's see if we can do this. As you can see, it'll want to rotate, so you might need to hold that lower coupling. I'm going to try it the other way. Okay, that's coming out. Punch is going in there now. Okay. There's the roll pin. Okay. We got that out. Now our lower coupling can be pulled off the pinion shaft. Okay, just comes right off. Now it only goes on one way. It fits on one way because there's a flat side. Right here is a flat side, which corresponds to a flat part in the coupling. So you'll only fit that on one way. Okay. You need to transfer this lower coupling to your new rack and pinion, and the fact that this retracts this section right here will help you once you've disconnected it from the upper coupling that connects to the steering column. You can push it down like that, and that'll mean you can lower it down through the firewall while it's still attached to the rack and pinion and the K-frame. That much easier. Alright, the other thing I wanted to mention, if you are either replacing your tie rod ends or you've got a new rack and pinion and you've got to install the tie rod ends, maybe you've got new ones or you're going to transfer them from the old rack and pinion to the new, what you've got to do is hold the tie rod end, and you might have to use a big pair of pliers, some vice grips, something like I'll grab it around the end of it here. Some of them will actually come with flat sides that lets you put a wrench or grab it with pliers easily. But like this one, this factory one, did not, so I would just grab it near the outside of it, right about here, with a big pair of pliers, and then get the right wrench to go on this nut, and you have to break them apart, because right now they're torqued and this nut is preventing the tie rod end from spinning on the rack and pinion shaft here. And that's how you would loosen it, and then it's threaded on. You'll need to unthread the tie rod end, just spin it off. Before you do that though, even before you crack these loose, what I would do is get some measurements of how far on it's been threaded. Now, I've tried this several ways. One is how many thread counts, how many rotations have you threaded it on. The problem with that is that I've seen some rack and pinions might have a shorter or longer count of threads. The tie rod might be slightly different length or something, so you need a different way to measure it. What I would do instead is, you'll see there's different sections on this inner tie rod end that you can measure from. You might take your digital caliper and measure, let's go from, we got these splines here that they'll grab onto when they're setting your alignment, and maybe you measure from those to the inside of that nut. That way you would know how far to put on the outer tie rod. Or you might go from the rubber boot where that's clamped, although that could be in a number of different places. So you would want to go from something that is consistent between the new and the old rack and pinion, measure from that to like where the inside of this nut is, or where the tie rod, outer tie rod edge is. And the important reason to do that is for your alignment. You can get it as close to the alignment that it had or that it should be before you need to drive it again. I would still take it to a shop to get it properly aligned, of course, but doing at least this will get you as close to what it was when you put on a new rack and pinion. Great job making it halfway. You've disassembled everything. You have a couple options. You can either continue watching this video for reassembly and then go to the previous video and halfway through that for continued reassembly, or you can continue on to the other videos, the other episodes in this series of videos. Now, one video that I would say is a must, I highly recommend that you watch, is the one for setting the engine angle, because that's going to show you how to not only torque down the lower motor mount and the upper motor mounts that will secure the engine, reconnect it, and secure it back to the K-frame, but by setting the engine angle according to specs, you'll prevent more wobble, more shimmy and transfer of the engine vibration into the car. It's already pretty bad on a PT. It can be, as far as the wobble and the, that engine vibration coming in to the steering wheel, to the shifter knob. So I highly advise you to watch that video so that you set that properly after doing all this work. Anytime that you loosen or remove the motor mounts, you should do that procedure again. So definitely watch the video that I have for setting the engine angle. Another video I'd recommend, either because it's required and you'll come to understand what I mean by required, or in case you're interested in the process and want to learn, is the centering of the clock spring. The clock spring is behind the steering wheel and the horn airbag assembly. And I went through the process of centering that because in the span of over a year that my PT has been undergoing its swap and modifications, engine swap to a turbo, I had the K-frame removed and the rack and pinion removed so that steering wheel was able to spin completely freely. And I just can't recall if I had bumped it at all or if it had been rotated beyond the centered where it was when I first took it off. And I wanted to center the clock spring because there is the risk of breaking the wires and the tape that's inside that clock spring if your steering wheel has been adjusted or moved either too far clockwise or counterclockwise. So if you're concerned about that, or if you just want to learn how to do it, watch the video on centering the clock spring. It is time we return from whence we came. It is time to install the K-frame or the front suspension cross member and the rack and pinion. First, you'll put the rack and pinion onto the K-frame and then reinstall it as an assembly.